Hey, Tom, great to see you here today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thanks. So, Tom, been really appreciative of having you talk to our clients over the many, many years here about Social Security.
Right.
Here at Quotient Wealth Partners, I'm Tim Harder, the Chief Investment Officer and co-founder here. We get a lot of folks that ask a lot of questions, and we want to make sure that we can get those questions answered for our clients. So it's great. So we're going to ask you some of those commonly answered questions.
Okay, that's good because there's a lot of misinformation out there about Social Security. So a lot of the answers are going to be what people don't expect.
Well, I guess that to be the case. And actually, you know, even though we do a lot of retirement planning for our clients, and I think a lot of people, when they think of Social Security, they think about that retirement benefit. But maybe we could start off on maybe talking about something people don't typically think about when they're thinking about Social Security, maybe one of the bigger benefits that they're not usually that aware of.
Right, yeah. I'm retired from Social Security now, but I did work there for 33 years. And based on that experience, in my opinion, the retirement benefits, which of course are the benefits people usually think about when they think about Social Security, in my opinion, they are the least important part of the program. Social Security also pays survivors benefits and disability benefits. And one reason I think they're more important is human nature. We look forward to retirement. We make plans for retirement. We just don't expect to die or become disabled at a young age, but it happens far more often than people realize. Actually, the records show that 1 out of 3 workers, 1 out of 3, will either pass away or become so disabled they can't do any type of work at all before they reach retirement age. Now, the great majority of those 1 out of 3 don't die before retirement age, which is the good news, but they become disabled before that age, which is much, much more expensive, which is the bad news.
Yeah, that's the things that you don't think about. You know, when we talk about planning, you plan out in this sort of linear way of what you think is going to happen in your life, and then invariably that's not the way it happens.
Yeah, life happens, and there's a lot of reasons why somebody might not be able to have the savings at retirement they anticipated. And one of those biggest reasons is one of those 2 wage earners of the couple becomes disabled, because that can really decimate those savings.
Yeah, okay. So, Tom, when we're looking at maybe the more traditional thing, one of the questions that we often get is, when we're talking about retirement, is when can I actually start taking this?
Right. Well, a person, there's a limit on their earnings if they're younger than for retirement age, but let's say they're retired, okay, they can receive benefits as early as age 62 for retirement benefits. They would be reduced a little bit for each month they're younger than full retirement age, though, if they do take it at 62. So they got to have a reduced benefit permanently if they do take it at 62. It's, in my opinion, I do a lot of radio shows and TV shows, and I find particularly for radio shows, the hosts always like to start out with a question, and they always ask me the same question, so I'm always ready for that. And the question they ask me is, what do you think the biggest mistake people make with Social Security? And my set answer is, I think they take the benefits too early. They don't realize how long they're likely to live. Now, there are times when somebody should take a reduced benefit, but in general, I think people take the benefit too early.
Yeah, Tom, so when you're trying to optimize that benefit, what are some of those factors, or what are those things that you need to be considering to take that early versus maybe later? Right.
Well, I'll give you an example of why somebody might want to take an early benefit. Let's say that it's 2009. Everybody's 401k is down 50%. Somebody is 62 years old and gets laid off, and of course not likely to go back to work anytime soon in that recession. It might have paid them to take an early Social Security benefit and not take money out of their 401k when it's down 50%, because that can really impact how long that money will last. So that's an example of maybe people should take it early sometimes. However, other than something like that, the great majority of people will benefit by taking the benefit later. I do a lot of personal consultations, and I've got a Social Security calculator that shows me, in today's dollars, not counting cost of living raises even, in today's dollars, how much total benefit somebody will receive in their lifetime, say a couple will receive by taking benefits at different ages. And quite often the difference between the higher wage earner of the couple taking it at 62 or waiting to full retirement age means waiting to full retirement age will mean they will receive more than $100,000 more from Social Security in their lifetime. And so we're talking about a significant difference. On the other hand, if you have a couple, a husband and a wife, I don't think it's necessarily logical for both members to wait till full retirement age or even longer, because once one of them passes away, the survivor is going to be drawing that one higher check. So it makes sense to me for the one with the higher benefit to wait as long as possible, because that way you've maximized the check the last survivor will receive. But why maximize both checks, since when one passes away, the survivor's down to that one higher check?
So the way to win in that one is if you both wait, you both need to live a really long time.
Right.
Right. And not have a big difference.
And if you do, that would pay off for both of them to do that. But in my calculator, quite often bears this out. Sometimes the best thing is for the one with the higher benefit to wait as long as possible, even past full retirement age, which we'll talk about in a little bit, while the one with the lower benefit takes it as soon as possible. Quite often my calculator bears out that would give them the most money. But even if it doesn't, that money that the one with the lower benefit would receive has some time value. If they pay down bills or invest it, it would make a big difference too. Now, if they both live to be 90, 95, they both should have waited till 70, right? But I always tell people when I'm doing a consultation, I say, picture in your mind a 90th birthday party, because a lot of people are living to be 90 these days. Yeah. So you picture in your mind a 90th birthday party. A lot of us have been to somebody's 90th birthday party. I say, do you see one person there, or do you see two people there turning 90? Yeah. Usually just see one, usually the wife. And so, it's not likely both are going to live that long, but it's very likely one of them will live to be that old.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we see those studies, and there's about a 25% chance of living to 90, but of a couple, there's about a 50% chance one of you makes it, and
right.
that's
right.
kind of that number out there.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, you said, you can take it as early as 62. You can go to full retirement age, and I think we are in the precipice of that just being a static age going forward, right? This has been going on for some time, and that age is going to be, I guess, 67 now?
67. So anybody born 1960 or later, the full retirement age is 67. Somebody born between 54 through 59, it's somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on the year they were born. So, but 67 for people born 1960 and later, and that's where it's going to stop. So now once somebody reaches that full retirement age, once somebody reaches 67, there's no limit on their earnings. They can keep on working and draw their full benefits. Below full retirement age is a limit on how much they can make from work, but once they reach full retirement age, no limit. But even then, some people don't take their checks in. Some people wait till 70.
Okay.
Now, why would they do that? Because of something called delayed retirement credits. For each month from their full retirement age, 67 for people born 60 and later, each month from full retirement age to 70 that they don't take a retirement benefit, when they do take that check, they'll add something extra called a delayed retirement credit. They add that for each month they don't take benefit between 67 and 70, but over 12 months it totals 8%.
Okay. So
somebody with the full retirement age of 67, if they wait till 70, the check would be 24% higher for the rest of their life, 8% for each of those 3 years. And if they're higher wage earner, if they pass away first, the widow or widower gets that higher benefit they got by waiting until 70. So that extra benefit goes to the widow or widower.
So that's a double advantage. So either you get it or your surviving spouse gets it if you've delayed.
Right. So quite often the best option, if people live the average lifespan or older, is for the one with the higher benefit to wait until 70 if they can afford to, and the one with the lower benefit take it as soon as possible. Because I find for the people I deal with, both financially and psychologically, it's easier for them to have one wait till 70 if they're getting some money from Social Security in the meantime with one of the lower benefits.
So you can take a little bit now, so that allows you to stretch into that long.
And in my opinion, the biggest risk for most people in retirement is not dying too soon, it's living too long. It's longevity risk, living so long they'll outlive their savings. Now, your clients would never do that, but some people are going to happen. It's going to happen to a lot of people, I'm afraid, right? Well, in my opinion, one of the best ways to minimize longevity risk is to wait till 70 for the one with higher benefit, because that way you've maximized that check. If they do outlive their savings, it'd be nice to have $4,000 a month coming in instead of $3,000. Or if you had $4,000 coming in all the time, maybe you wouldn't have outlived your savings. And there's compound interest involved, because Social Security benefits go up automatically with inflation. Yeah. And if inflation goes way up, it goes way down, but it's always going to average 3%. Historically, it's always going to average right at 3%. Well, the 3% raise on a $4,000 check is more dollars than 3% raise on a $3,000 check. And then the next year, that next 3% raise goes on that higher amount. So it's compound interest. And I figure this out for people all the time. That difference of $1,000 when they're 70, by waiting till 70, by the time they're 88 or 89 years old, that's almost $2,000 more a month because of that.
That compounding impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I think when it comes to retirement, we talk about inflation being one of your biggest enemies as a retiree. I think we're more familiar with it over the last few years. We'd kind of almost forgotten about inflation for a couple of decades, but it certainly comes back. And Social Security is one of the few benefits that exist out there that give you a inflation-based increase.
Right. For a great majority of
Most
people,
pensions don't.
It's their only guaranteed income is going to keep pace with inflation. To me, it makes sense to maximize your only guaranteed income is going to keep pace with inflation, at least for the one with the higher benefit. Right. And I want to make one thing clear, too, that those delayed retirement credits, the ones you get by waiting longer, waiting up till 70, that only applies to retirement benefits, which are benefits based on a person's own work. A person who's going to draw spouse's benefits or widow's benefits, those don't go up by waiting past full retirement age. Okay. Now, say the husband has a $4,000 check because he waited till 70. And he passes away first. The widow does get that bigger check he got by waiting till 70. So that $4,000, she would get that if she has full retirement age, but it wouldn't go up by delaying it past full retirement age. So she gets the bigger check he got, but there's no reason to delay a widow's benefit past full retirement age because it wouldn't increase.
Okay. So different rules depending on sort of sequence of who predeceases.
Right. Because I've seen some people say they're going to delay the widow's benefits to get that 8% more added to it per year, and that'd be a mistake.
Once the death happens, that's
right.
That's sort of locked in.
Yeah.
So, Tom, one of the questions we get asked a lot about, one of people's biggest concerns, sort of, as they move into retirement, is they start talking about when do I start taking Social Security, but then the other question is that healthcare piece, and they start asking questions about Medicare. So, what are the things that you see where people are making some mistakes in that, or some of the challenges people face when they start coming to their Medicare
Well,
benefit?
first of all, in my opinion, Medicare is far more important than Social Security. Far more important, because Medicare gives us something we simply cannot get anywhere else. And that's health care insurance that pays first once we're 65 and over and retired from where we have our health insurance. That's worth more than money. If it wasn't for Medicare, we wouldn't be insured past age 65. So what Medicare means is we still have access to health care after age 65. To me, that's worth more than money. Also, with Social Security, you can't mess up too bad with Social Security. Maybe there's a strategy that a couple could have used, and had they done that, they'd have a bigger check at some point. But if they do everything wrong with Social Security, they still end up with a guaranteed lifetime benefit that keeps pace with inflation. So they can't mess up real bad with Social Security. With Medicare, though, if they don't have the Medicare in place properly when Medicare is their primary payer and they have a serious illness, they almost certainly will be bankrupt. And I'm not exaggerating there. You'd be amazed how many people I talk to that Medicare pays over $2 million in hospital and doctor bills for one person in one calendar year. Usually over half that's doctor bills, which is what Medicare Part B pays, which is really what we're talking about here. If they didn't have their Part B in place, then that's their $1 million bill to pay out of their pocket. And the point I always make to people is somebody had the kind of illness that cost $2 million in 1 year. If they're still alive the next January, you think Medicare paid nothing the next year? Probably paid another $2 million, right? Another $1 million out of their pocket if they didn't have their Part B in place. So to me, number one priority at retirement is making sure you do your Medicare properly. Make sure at age 65 you have Medicare properly. And it's much more complicated than Social Security too, much more complicated. And what's complicated a lot is a lot of people are working past 65, a lot more. In the past, hardly anybody worked past 65, so it was pretty simple. But with people working past 65, it complicates it a lot. When they should take Medicare, the different parts of Medicare, when they should not.
Okay. And what are some of those complicating factors? That they're still on their employer's insurance?
Yeah. Okay, so once Medicare is their primary payer, once Medicare is paying first, they've got to have Medicare Part A and B in place because Medicare is going to pay first. And once Medicare is the primary payer, nobody in the world will pay anything Medicare to pay for except Medicare. So once Medicare is primary, they've got to have Medicare in place. This is the time Medicare is not primary. When somebody turns 65, if they're still working for an employer, excuse me, of 20 or more employees. So they turn 65, if they're still working for an employer of 20 or more employees, covered by that employer's health insurance as an active employee. Then Medicare pays second. The employer's insurance pays first. Medicare doesn't force somebody to pay for Part B as secondary coverage. Part B has a premium. In that situation, they don't have to pay for Part B. And it works for their spouse, too. Say this person's working for an employer of 20 more employees, covered as an active employee by their health insurance, and they have their spouse on that insurance, and their spouse turns 65. That's the same as them working down there. Medicare secondary for their spouse, so that wage earner retires. They can also wait and get their Part B at that point. So then the questions revolve around, when should I take Part B in that situation? Should I ever take Medicare when it's secondary? When should I take Part A, which is the hospital inpatient insurance, or when should I not take Part A? And it gets very complicated.
Oh. And that's assuming that they're just with the employer that they've been with all along. You're starting to see, I know we talked about this in a prior conversation, that you start seeing people change employers after 65, which is a relatively new phenomenon.
Right. And that really gets complicated then, because the question is, should they take Part B if there's a gap between employment after age 65? Should they take Part B? Should they not? Should they take Part A? Should they not? And is there going to be a gap between, if they say they're changing jobs, they're not unemployment, they're after age 65, they're just going to work for another employer. Is there a gap in health care coverage during that time? Is it seamless? Do the insurance say stop in July for this one employer, start August 1st for the next one, or is there going to be a waiting period, a gap? And that can really complicate things. And I see people who have, $3 or $4 million in retirement savings in their 401ks, and they will not take Part B during that gap because they don't want to pay a premium for it. And if they were to get sick, that $3 or $4 million could be gone if they didn't have insurance for doctor bills, right? It could be gone real quick. So I see people risking millions of dollars in retirement savings for the sake of saving a few $100s in premiums. And so, I tell people all the time, if I didn't have coverage for doctor bills, I wouldn't get out of bed. I'd be afraid to leave the house because I've seen so many tragic cases of how high medical bills can be for people without insurance.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And I think when people are trying to plan for what's different in their life in retirement, that's certainly one of them, going from an employer-sponsored health insurance to government-sponsored.
Yeah, and they need to talk to somebody about that, because they said it can be very complicated. And I worry some, because we baby boomers, there's a bunch of us, and us reaching retirement age has just about doubled Social Security's workload. Well, the staff, even before this year, even before additional cutbacks, it's probably going to happen, their staff was already the lowest it's been since the 1960s, over a 50-year low in staffing with more than double the workload. And then with things that happened at the first of the year, anybody who was eligible to retire probably pretty much retired, so they lost all the experience. So I worry about people getting their answers these days from Social Security on those kind of complicated subjects.
Yeah, all those baby boomers taking care of baby boomers. In this, I was going to say too. I think we for some of these questions are very specific for our clients, and we've historically always say reach out to Social Security Administration and have your questions answered, because they've got the records and they've got the knowledge base.
Right.
And I'm always just amazed by how well they come back and respond to our clients, and how detailed it is.
It's a great agency, but they're under tremendous stress right now, and I just don't know if they're going to crack or not.
Yeah, there's more people asking and fewer people being able to deliver on on those things.
Yeah.
When it comes to Medicare, I think a lot of our clients they ask about the Medicare premiums. So we do quite a bit of planning, trying to help people make sure they don't hit those numbers. But also at the end of the day, sometimes it's just inevitable that you're at those numbers. You want to talk a little bit about how that works in that space?
So we're talking about Medicare Part B mostly here. So Part B, which is the insurance for part of Medicare that covers doctor bills and outpatient, it has a premium, monthly premium Most people pay $185 a month for Part B this year, here in 2025. $185 a month is Part B's premium. But that's only 1/4 the cost of the premium of Part B. The federal government pays the other 3/4. So every month somebody pays $185 for their Part B. For that same one person, for that same 1 month, the government paid $555 for their Part B. We pay 1/4, the government pays 3/4. And these amounts go up with inflation, but this year, if somebody has income above $106,000 for an individual or $212,000 for a couple, they don't get the full 75% subsidy from the government. They pay more than 1/4 the cost. They pay more than $185 a month. How much more they pay depends on how much their income's above $106,000 for an individual or $212,000 for a couple. But here's the issue. Social Security has no idea how much income somebody will have this year or how much they had last year. Right. So they have to base that higher premium on income from 2 years before. So here in 2025, that higher premium is based on somebody's 2023 income. Come January 2026, it's based on 2024 income and so on, always 2 years before. But if somebody's income has gone down since 2 years ago because of certain events called life-changing events, they can ask to base that premium on their current income, not what they had 2 years ago. The most common of those life-changing events is retirement. So let's say we have a couple, both work and have good jobs. They retire, they file for the Medicare Part B, and then they get a letter saying, based on your income 2 years ago, we have to charge this higher premium. If the income went down because of retirement, then they need to call Social Security up and say, our income went down because of retirement, so they don't have to pay that higher premium. Because Social Security doesn't know unless they tell them. Just the fact that the income's gone down since 2 years ago does not necessarily mean they don't have to pay the higher premium. It has to gone down for certain reasons called life-changing events. Retirement's most common of those. Change in marital status, like becoming widows, is the next most common. There are a few others that don't apply very often, but might apply to somebody. And the letter they get saying they have to pay the higher premium, it lists all those possible life-changing events. If their income has gone down since 2 years ago because of any of those, they need to call Social Security and let them know. And then, as you're probably going to say, they need to be careful in the future because selling a bunch of property, get capital gains is not a life-changing event. Taking a lot of money, deferred money out of your 401k, for example, is not a life-changing event. So if somebody needs to take a lot of money out of their deferred accounts, it might pay them to take half of it out in December and half out in January maybe and spread it over 2 years so maybe it doesn't push them above those limits. Because people will do that, get surprised that 2 years later for 12 months they have to pay a higher premium.
Yes, and that's that temporary, and we do a lot of planning for clients around those numbers.
Right.
I think the biggest one though is just making that communication, because a lot of them kind of get thrown off initially because they're first applying and they just retired and they've had that drop in income. And they're eligible for some relief, even though you may not realize that at first. But and be careful in the future. Like I said, I run into people all the time that they just took a lot of they needed money and they took a lot out of their 401k. Had they spread it over 2 calendar years, maybe they wouldn't have even hit the limit and it wouldn't have cost them that extra premium. Yeah, we see that a lot, and that's on top of it. Especially if you're taking money out of an IRA or 401k, there's a big tax burden to that as well. Right. So on top of that, you get a tax burden, and then you've got this extra Medicare hit. Those costs of those extra dollars sometimes can be a lot more than what you would anticipate. You go to take out an extra $1,000, that $1,000 is very quickly $1,500, $1,800.
And that's exactly why sometimes somebody who's changing jobs after 65 will not want to take Part B because they're affected by that law, which we call IRMA. We call that law IRMA because they're affected by IRMA and they don't want to pay for 3 or 4 months that higher premium. But once again, they don't need to go uninsured for doctor bills for 1 second, much less 3 or 4 months. Yeah. To prioritize those. Just a higher premium, even if it's for a full 12 months, is probably not worth going uninsured. That's right. Especially if you have money. If you have that $3 or $4 million saved for retirement, that's at risk possibly. If you or you may end up going without medical care you need if you don't have insurance. So.
And especially when you're probably in your mid to late 60s, you probably don't want to be risking those types of things.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah. So Tom, what other things do you see out there that maybe come up just once in a while that maybe don't impact everybody, but when they do, they're kind of tougher questions to answer? I know We get situations maybe with folks that have been divorced and have questions about collecting benefits based on their former spouse.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, then that's very important. The laws are exactly the same for men or women, but to keep it simple, I'll pick one gender. Let's say we have a divorced wife. If she can receive benefits on her ex-husband's record, if first of all they're married at least 10 years,
Yeah.
she has to be unmarried when she applies for benefits, with one exception I'll talk about in a minute. She has to be unmarried, though, to receive benefits on her ex-husband's record. And she has to meet all the same requirements a current wife or widow has to meet. Some people think it's like a pension called a quadro, that you automatically get part of it if you're married to them. That's not the place with Social Security. Being married to somebody for 10 years just makes you potentially eligible for benefits on that person's record, but you have to meet all the same requirements a current wife or widow has to meet. So, for example, if their ex-spouse is living, they have to be not entitled to more based on their own work. If your spouse or ex-spouse is living, you always have to take your own Social Security retirement benefits first before you can draw anything on their record. And when they're living, anything you draw on their record is based on half. So if your own full retirement age amount is more than half of your ex-spouse's, you can't draw anything on the record while they're living. You just draw your own higher amount. However, if they pass away first, the widow's benefit is based on the full amount of their check. Mm-hmm. And so the most common situation I see these days for benefits on an ex-spouse's record is usually they're not doing anything on the record while their ex-spouse is living because their own benefit's more than half. But if that person's benefit is higher than them and they pass away first, they can step up with those divorced widows' benefits, and they need to contact Social Security. Social Security tries not to miss anybody, but they might not know that this person is the ex-spouse, right?
Right.
And so they need to contact Social Security to file for those divorced.
And that's not impacted even if there is a current spouse?
That's right. It wouldn't matter if there's a current spouse.
So there could have a current spouse and an ex-spouse both
for
collecting
example,
on that
if an
widow's
ex-wife
benefit?
receives benefits on her ex-husband's record, her checks don't affect anything he or a current wife or widow might receive. Their checks do not affect anything she'd receive. She draws independently. And the one exception to needing to be unmarried, this applies also to current widows who are married to the wage earner when they passed away. If they remarry after they're 60,
Okay.
then that marriage wouldn't keep them from getting benefits on the deceased ex-spouse's record.
So effectively then, if you got married and your ex-spouse and you were over 60 with an ex-spouse, you could collect on your benefit, your new spouse's benefit that you married post-60,
Right, could.
and your
We get
ex-spouse.
whichever one pays you the most. though, as far
Right.
as the
So
money.
you've got another option in the equation.
Right. But that would only be if the ex-spouse is deceased.
Okay.
The ex-spouse is living. If they're remarried, they can't draw any benefits no matter what. But if their ex-spouse is deceased, as long as their current marriage didn't start before they're at least 60, then they could still draw the divorced widow's benefits.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
I remember back when I was a field representative at Social Security, I had somebody come in out of Weatherford, Texas. Somebody came in to apply for widow's benefits, and they'd remarried the day before they turned 60. They didn't know the rule. They found a very kind judge who annulled the marriage and then married them again. So,
wow. Yes, that does. Every once in a while that happens. You got to do something for tax purposes.
Yeah. So it pays to know the rules.
It absolutely does. Well, and it was good they could get that redone. Tom, one of the other questions that comes up a lot for us, and I think probably increasingly more so for some younger folks, but I think a lot of folks are concerned about the deficits that we carry as a government, and particularly sort of the financial state of Social Security, and is it something that's going to actually that they should count on? Every once in a while we'll have somebody come in and say, well, I don't count for any of the Social Security in my retirement plan. And so what is your sort of response to those folks?
Well, it simply cannot go away. It simply cannot, because it's much, much too important, not only to the people drawing Social Security, but to everybody pretty much who has a job. People think of Social Security in a way to just affect people on Social Security. No, it affect everybody, because Social Security is the largest source of income everywhere. Just here in Texas, just in one state, here in Texas, Social Security pays $7.5 billion a month in benefits. $7.5 billion a month. Wow. And almost every penny of that gets spent. Because if you're 80 years old, you're no longer saving for retirement. So you're spending all that check because it's coming next month and next month. Well, the economists tell us the dollar turns over, that spent turns over 7 times in the economy. Is that right? So how many paychecks is $7.5 billion a month getting spent in Texas turned into? Almost everybody's, actually. I used to tell people back when we got paper checks, showing my age here, back when we got paper paychecks, I used to say I wish that they were different colors so you'd see what Social Security would be one color, every other thing another color. So you'd see how much your paycheck depends on people spending that Social Security check. And so can you imagine the depression we would have if this one state lost $7.5 billion a month in spending? It would affect everybody. I fly to a lot of seminars all around the country now since I retired and doing this second gig here. I fly around the country, and I've made a point when I'm waiting at the airport at the gate to see who's getting on the plane with me lately. I've been counting, and almost every flight I'm on, almost half the people getting on that plane are clearly drawing Social Security, which is an undercount because some people look younger than they are. So if you work at an airline, if Social Security goes away, either your paychecks get cut in half or half you get laid off because there's no other option. Yeah. If you work for a company that has cruises, you think it would be a cruise company would be in business, Social Security went away, and it goes on and on and on. It goes on and on and on. A lot of people wondered.
I know the casinos would be out of business in a heartbeat.
That's right. No more WinStar. Yeah. A lot of people started wondering why 2008, 2009 we didn't have another Great Depression. Why it wasn't another 1929. And a lot of economists concluded that the difference between 2009 to 1929 was in 1929 Social Security did not exist. 2009 Social Security existed because that $7.5 billion was still getting spent. People who didn't get laid off in 2008, 2009 quit spending if they could because they're afraid they'd be laid off next, which made the recession even worse. But that $7.5 billion was still getting spent, keeping all these stores and restaurants open.
Yeah. And they even spent better, probably. It was a little disinflationary or deflationary at that time, right?
That's right.
So the dollars went a little further.
That's right.
I do remember the only complaint from people that were on Social Security at that time was that their benefits didn't get to go up very much at that time.
Actually, prices went down in 2008, 2009. You don't get a cost of living raise when prices go down. You don't get a cut, but you don't get a raise either. And then what got people, they didn't understand too, was, okay, so prices were at this level here. They went down to here. Well, you're not going to get a cost of living raise till prices exceed this level here because you already got a raise up to that level. So it was another couple of years after the recession ended before they got any kind of a raise because the price had to go back up to the level they're already being paid at. And that's what people didn't understand.
Yeah, there were a lot of years with zero increases in that period. But that's really uncommon to your original point.
Absolutely.
Where you expect it to go up more around that 3% per year. And that's obviously we've seen that more recently and then some.
In my career at Social Security, I saw a cost of living raise of zero. And that's the only time it was zero was in the Great Recession area. But I saw them also high as 14.3% back in the early 80s during the oil crisis. No matter what it is, Congress doesn't have to do anything. It's automatic. No matter what it is, if it's 14%, everybody gets that percentage increase in their checks.
Yeah, and I'm obviously we're in the retirement planning business ourselves, and we take a look at these things. And for somebody today, I think sometimes they don't think about it being a huge part. They may not be counting on Social Security. They've been really good savers and high earners. But at the end of the day, so somebody that defers to age 70 and has max earnings, what is their monthly benefit even?
Well, it's crowding $5,000 a month at this point. And if you think that benefits, even adjusted for inflation, if they're more than they used to be, if they buy more than they used to be, you're absolutely right. And this is why. It's probably a mistake, but this is why. The way they compute your retirement benefits, they use your highest 35 years of earnings to compute your benefit at highest 35. But before they pick out those high 35, they adjust all your past year's earnings for inflation, turn your past year's earnings into current dollars, then pick out the high 35. Well, since they're adjusting earnings, they use wage inflation to make that adjustment rather than price inflation. It's how fast wages go up that they increase your earnings are going to base your benefit on rather than how much prices go up. Well, overall, wages go up faster than prices. That's why our standard of living has increased over the years. So each generation, because of that reason, it gets a bigger check as far as its buying power than previous generations. So yes, they are bigger now than they used to be, even if you adjust them for inflation.
Yeah, I was going to say $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year, and if you've got and you've got a husband and wife potentially that, But I mean, even at $60,000, you start putting a discount cash flow on that thing, and that's in the millions of
Right.
millions of dollars of present value
Oh,
in
yeah.
terms of what it would take to actually go out and pay for a benefit that gave you that same monthly cash flow.
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
Increasing with inflation each.
I used to actually have back when I
every year.
when I was doing seminars for Social Security, it's working Social Security. Insurance reps would tell me if I had that money to invest, I could do so much better with it. So I made a deal with them. I never had a taker on it. I told them, if you could give me everything I get with my FICA taxes, give me my retirement protection with no underwriting, survivor's protection with no underwriting, the benefit I get adjusted for inflation for retirement if I don't become disabled or die before then, and the inflation protection after that. If you give me all that for the price I'm paying, I'll buy 3 of them.
Yes.
And I never had a taker on it. It is a great deal. It really is.
It absolutely is. I've seen how impactful it is for folks over the course of their remaining years.
So the effect of Social Security going away, it was so bad that no Congress would ever let that happen. So that's why I don't worry about it at all. Not one little bit do I worry about it. Some people say, I'm going to take it at 62, so I'll make sure I get it. There may be some reasons, good reasons to take it at 62, but thinking it's going to go away is not one of those good reasons.
Yeah, I concur with that. I've been doing this a long time, and you want to make sure that you're maximizing.
And people maybe don't realize the impact. Most people aren't your clients. The great majority of people over 65, Social Security is more than half their income. For 2/3 of people over 65, Social Security is more than half their income. So if those checks didn't go out, think what the homeless population would look like. So it just the human cost would be so tremendous too. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and then one of the things we talked about Irma and people trying to sort of, I guess, manipulate their income levels, where you have some choices in your retirement years, how much money you take out of your 401ks, your IRAs. We also see sometimes people being a little bit fearful of the taxation on their Social Security. So there's a couple of different levels of where you're taxed on Social Security, but first of all, general comments to those folks that are worried about that.
Well, when somebody asked me in a seminar that I'm doing, will my benefits be taxable? My answer is I hope so, because if they're not, that means you don't have a whole lot of income for retirement. If your income, this is half your Social Security plus all your other income, if that's more than $25,000 for an individual or $32,000 for a couple, at least part of the benefits will be taxable. How much are taxable depends on how much your income is above $25,000 for an individual or $32,000 for a couple. If your income is above $34,000 for an individual or $44,000 for a couple, you get to the point where you have to include 85% of your benefits in your taxable income. Now, you don't pay anywhere near 85% in taxes. You pay whatever tax bracket you're in, say 12%, because most people are in the 12% bracket. You pay 12% of 85%. Here's what makes some people happier about paying the taxes, where the money goes. Income tax paid on Social Security goes back to the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. It doesn't go in the general fund. So Social Security trust funds have almost a $3 trillion surplus, which was saved ahead for us babies to draw down. So that was the whole plan. It would be saved ahead for us to draw down. And that would have been plenty if we died as soon as they thought we were going to as baby boomers. We're living longer than they anticipated back in 1983 when they passed that law, and that's why they have to make some changes. But to be fairly minor, because they got this $3 trillion surplus that we're drawing down now. But about 20% of that $3,000 surplus has been income tax paid on Social Security. So that's where the money goes.
So that's Social Security taxes are funding Social Security again.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was all part of a series of laws they passed in 1983, because Congress, by their own laws, has to plan ahead for Social Security for 75 years. Now, that's really not possible to do, but that's what their law says, right? But in 1983, Congress looked and said, we've got this huge generation of baby boomers. They're not having a whole lot of kids, so they're going to be all retiring and not many people working, so we need to prepay. We need to pay ahead and get a surplus. They passed a series of laws to generate that surplus to protect our kids. They don't have to pay a whole lot more tax now that we're retiring. And they did a really good job with that. Back in the late 80s, the trust funds were running a $27 million an hour surplus. And so that's where this big $3 trillion, because $1 trillion is a lot of money. So there's almost $3 trillion extra being drawn down. And that basically protects the younger people who are still working right now. Now, they may need to make some adjustments, probably do, because, as I said, we're living longer than anticipated. But those adjustments will be pretty minor because of this huge surplus that we've got.
Okay, well, that's reassuring to know. That's reassuring to know. I know a lot of people ask about that, and
right.
But yes, it's generally the counsel we're giving them is, hey, if you're getting ready to take Social Security, you should plan on it continuing to be there.
Yeah, and it's going to be there for future generations too, because it's more important for future generations than it is for the past ones, because pensions are just about disappeared.
Yes.
So for our kids, our grandkids, this is their only guaranteed lifetime income, almost certainly. So it's going to be even more important for future generations than it is now, even.
Right. So you're telling somebody that's maybe a millennial or younger that maybe they should be, the fact that they don't have a pension is probably a bigger issue than their fear of not having Social Security.
Absolutely. Because we know they don't have a pension. Other than a few people. Few people are lucky enough to have one, but for the great majority of people, they will not have a pension. So it's nice to have guaranteed income. That's what Social Security is going to be for them, is their only guaranteed income. Yeah,
perfect. All right. So, Tom, anything else we need to know? Anything we've left out, or any of our clients haven't been asking us enough questions about?
No, I do worry. These days, I am really worried about people not doing their Medicare properly. So, find somebody that knows what they're talking about when the Medicare time comes, particularly if you're going to work past 65, to make sure you're doing it properly. Because we don't have a long enough show to get into all the ifs, ands, and buts about that. But that's the biggest area that I worry about people making wrong decisions about, or not making a decision at all.
Yeah. Right, and a non-decision is a decision in that case.
That's
right.
Right.
So, yes, absolutely. I know people have got to be on that. What's just for their Medicare? They've got to be ready in advance of age 65 as well. They've kind of got to.
Yeah, let's say somebody's retired, so they're not currently working. So Social Security is going to be their primary payer at age 65. If they're not drawing Social Security yet, maybe they don't want to take the Social Security yet, they can apply for Medicare only. And people say, well, you've got a 7-month initial enrollment period, 7 months to file for Medicare. That's the 3 months before you turn 65, the month you turn 65, the 3 months after. In my opinion, it's not 7 months long. It's only 3 months long, because, once again, I don't want anybody to have 1 second's gap in coverage. So this person's retired, so Medicare's primary. Say they're going to turn 65 in October. So supposedly that 7-month period is 3 months before October, the 3 months after, and the month of October. No. If they don't apply for the Medicare before the end of September, the month before they turn 65, they're going to have a gap in coverage. If they waited until October, the month they turn 65, to file for Medicare, they wouldn't have Part B till November 1st. They'd have the whole month of October without any coverage for doctor bills. Okay. Once again, based on my experience, I'd be afraid to get out of bed, because I know somebody the Medicare Part B paid $330,000 in 7 days. So you need to make sure you don't have 1 second's gap in coverage. Now, if they work past 65, it could be a mistake to take any parts of Medicare. Once again, very complicated, but there's a time when, if Medicare's secondary, it might be a bad mistake to take one or both parts of Part A or Part B. So it does get very complicated.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. We'll take those notes of caution out there. And right. So, Tom, this has been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
We really appreciate it. Folks, if you've got any other questions for us at Quotient Wealth Partners, please reach out to your advisors. You can email us. And love to hear from you and pick up more of your questions. And I'm sure we'll have Tom back. In fact, we might actually see if you'll stick around later today, and we could do some rapid fire one-offs.
Sounds good.
So thank you very much. Welcome, Tom Clark. I'm Tim Harder with Quotient Wealth Partners. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks.